Greetings and welcome. Assalamu alaikum. You're tuned into the Sajdah Saturday Morning Coffee Talks, where we talk about life, love, and business. And we're starting our series today on the proper handling of people. And so we're going to get into it right after these few commercials. I feel like it's very important before you start any venture, any event to touch base with the universe, to say a prayer to Allah, to God, whatever aligns you. And so that's what's important. So we're going to do that and see a few commercials, and we will be right back.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who in my judgment is the master historian, taught us that of all our studies, history is the most attractive, and it is best qualified to reward the researcher. History is most attractive. Why should history be most attractive? Because history is the recorded time of the human family in its struggle to overcome obstacles. There is no life that is without struggle. The Holy Quran teaches us that man, meaning man and woman, is made to face difficulties. And after difficulty comes ease. But it is history that guides us through difficulty. For if you know how people who had difficulty yesterday got through, and if your difficulty is somewhat similar, then today we also can get through if we follow the guidance of history. This is why Carter G. Woodson and many of our black giants fought for black people to know our history. Because in not knowing our history, we don't have a guide. And without a guide, we are lost. No wonder the Bible...
Assalamu alaikum, family. Wa alaikum salam to those of you already in the chat. Good morning, Brother Lamont. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, Brother Javan. Wa alaikum salam. Good morning, Brother Victor. And wa alaikum salam, Brother Victor. Wa alaikum salam, Sister Sajdah. Yes, happy Saturday. Thank you all for joining already. I put some definitions here in the chat. First off, before you start, let me make sure you know this is our new series on the proper handling of people. So if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe to the page so that you can get notification. This is a series that I'm starting, that I've been working on. And this is what I want to say about it before we start. And so let me set this up. So many times we're taught as business people how to deal with customers and people from our perspective, right? We don't want people to think we're lame. We're always defending something. We don't want people to think that we're not powerful. We don't like people to think we're not educated. Wa alaikum salam, Sister Marva. We don't want people to think that we're not educated. We don't want people to think we're a pushover and that they can get over on us. We don't want people to think that we ain't got no money. And we don't want people to think that we don't know what we're doing. And so we approach our relationship with people, our relationship with money, our relationship with our customers, our relationships at work from that vantage point. And that vantage point, really, it's a fear. It's a fear of misidentification. When we approach things from that fear, it causes us to mishandle things. And it can cause us to mishandle the very thing that could make us wildly successful. And that's why we're going to dig into the proper handling of people over the next few weeks. I put some definitions here in the chat. So if you're in the chat, you'll see them. If not, I will show them. Let's see. So let's start with handling. It's called the proper handling of people. And let me also say this. When you go out on the internet, there's tons of information out there how to deal with toxic people, how to deal with controlling people, how to deal with negative people, how to deal with manipulative people, how to deal with narcissists, how to deal with all these other things. But what about us? What about how should I be? Not only in order to attract to myself what it is that I want, but how do I get healthy? See, oftentimes there's so much attention placed outside of ourselves that we just continue to repeat the cycle of behaviors over and over and over again. A lot of us reject techniques or fundamental ways of doing things, especially if they're given to us in a religious context, we think. And I just want to say that to people who have an issue with that. Yes, I'm a business person, but my foundation, my fundamental way of being and living and moving and operating is through Islam as taught to us by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. There are some fundamental techniques that are taught within our teachings that I think should be required reading and required learning in every school and every corporation. This concept of proper handling of people, it's a take on the Dale Carnegie work of proper handling of people. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is so skilled at taking techniques and incorporating medicine that addresses us as Black people specifically. And so that's, what this series is. It's interesting because so much of who we are as Muslims in the Nation of Islam is based on a way of life, a way of being, a way of thinking. And a lot of people will say, I don't get into religion. I ain't feeling that. But you're going to need some divine intervention to get you where you're trying to go, because you can't defeat this person, this system that's now become a system that has been set up for 400 years. And even if you don't believe that it's racist, which I don't know how you could not believe that, or racially biased, but even if you don't believe that, we're not talking about that. We're talking about you and I rising above emotions into the thinking of God, into the thinking of God. So elevating our thoughts, elevating our mindset, elevating the way that we do things so that we move and function and attract and impact like a God. Okay, so this is what this is about. So handling is the act of taking or holding something in our hands. So it goes down to that level of responsibility I was talking about. Everything talks about, how do you deal with toxic people? How do you deal with controlling people? How do you deal with all these other different types of people with all these new labels that everybody's got nowadays that we're all learning in our counseling session? Don't get me wrong. Counseling is good. Therapy is good. But then we come out, and to me, we misapply a lot of these techniques and definitions that we learn. And so now everything's all about them, they, you. But how are you handling something? I was on a podcast the other night listening to a podcast the other night, or a live with a brother on TikTok who was talking about love bombing. And he was saying healthy people can't be love bombed because they don't get addicted to somebody love bombing them. So I thought it was interesting that he took the focus onto self. And I'm saying the same thing with the proper handling of people. How are you handling people? See, a lot of us learn business from pimps, from hustlers, because that's all we see. That's all we know. We learn business from, our mama who always had to go up to the store and cuss somebody out, or our daddy who always was fighting somebody, or local people in the street who sell drugs and we just watch, or the corner store person who's a predator, who's not from our community, who's brought in bad goods and services. These make up the accumulation of our mindset of how to do business. Um, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about all of that old stuff becoming part of our psychology. And now we're talking about healing and developing new and more attractive and exciting ways of doing business. So handling is the act of taking or holding something in the hands or in your hands. How do you handle it? How do you take responsibility? Then it talks about proper. It says proper handling of people, simply satisfactory or correctly. See, when we're coming from a space of ego, and as soon as we sit down at a business table or we go to do business, like, I don't know who they think they are. They ain't finna steal from me. They ain't getting ready. Okay. But who do we have to be up front? So that if we end up having to deal with somebody a certain way, we can be justified. Who are we up front? How are we handling things? Yes, of course, mistakes get made. And sometimes people do try you. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in the series. And I'm going to take your questions and your comments throughout the series because I want to hear about real life scenarios that you all are going through that we can talk about and even analyze. All right. When I say proper, I think that's to imply that there's an improper way that is not in accordance with certain accepted rules or standards of morality or honesty. We're going to get into that a little bit because I know a lot of people reject that. I remember one time I was working with a guy and he said to me, he said, "You know what your problem is, Wendy? You got to learn how to give it to people like they give it to you." I was like, "What does that mean?" And he was actually talking about somebody that he felt like I should have cursed out and I chose not to. And don't get me wrong, I'm not at all perfect, okay? And I can get with somebody like the best of them. I'm good with my words and I'm extremely intuitive. So you really can't get past me on too many things. But I've learned how to pick my battles. I've learned when to say something and when not. I've learned that a lot of times when I see things, because remember, I'm one of these empaths and extremely sensitive people. So I will see things, hear things, sometimes before it even happens, and know that it ain't right and know that you ain't right. Know that you ain't sincere. Know that there's some game in there. But then I decide for myself how I want to deal with it. Your behavior is not going to dictate who I am and how I vibrate. So I decide for myself. If it's time to get rid of you because I know you've been running game, then I'll do that. If it's time where I say, you know what, but I need this particular product or service, so I'm not going to abort the process. It just depends. It's using discernment. It's using decision making. Okay. So technique is what this is. It's a way of carrying out a particular task, especially the execution or performance of an artistic work or a scientific procedure. And I like to say that proper handling of people is as much an art as it is a technique. Okay. So we're going to get into that in our weekly series. It's really like a class, right? We're just going to talk about it. And I think what's so powerful about subjects like this is the way your brain works, if you allow yourself to be emotionally intelligent, is that once you raise the awareness is the mother or the foundation of doing better. Once you know better, you do better. I spent time getting certification as an emotional intelligence coach. I had people asking me at that time I was working for a corporation, or I was subcontracting, I think, for a company doing business consulting. And people asked me, why would you do that as a business consultant? Because it's important. It's important for me because I'm extremely sensitive. So I needed to know how to manage my emotional intelligence because I'm going to see everything. I'm going to feel the vibration when it ain't right. I'm going to feel it when it's right. The idea is to control ourselves. Okay, so y'all all right on here? Everybody good? You got your tea, you got some coffee. I made some chai this morning. A lot of people asking me about these thermoses. We sell these on the Sajdah House site. So make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure that you support the completion of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. You can do that by, you can Cash App, you can Zelle, you can go to Sajdah House Donations if you want to use your credit card, SajdahHouseDonations.com. You can Cash App $Mo today. It's right there on the bottom of the screen, MOETODAY. And you can become a sponsor. You can purchase a commemorative Elijah coin. We are working to finish the home. And it's one of those projects. It's not been easy. Preservation is tough work. It's not work that people readily and easily donate to, because a lot of people don't understand the value of history. And of course, the value of Black history has really not even been recognized. A lot of times we don't attach a value to it. I get so many questions like, what and why would you do this? And why are you trying to do this? So it is what it is. But for those of you who get it and who understand, then those are the ones that I'm saying, look, help us complete the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. Make a donation, become a sponsor. We're still trying to raise these funds. And it just takes one good person, several good people. So if you need a sponsorship package, you can just send me an email, SajdahHouseDonations.com. All right, so let's get into our proper handling of people. The book, I'm going to put the link. I'll find out if it's still available on the final call. I don't think it is. If it's not, I'll reach out and see if they plan to bring it back. It's not a book that I can sell, so we'll talk about that a little later. But it's broken down into chapters, and then it's broken down into sub-chapters. Okay, so then there's chapter 1, and the sub-chapter of chapter 1 is entitled Fundamental Technique in Handling People. We talked about the meaning of fundamental. Let me give that to you all again. Fundamental is forming a necessary base or core of central importance. Okay, I don't think I went over that one. Fundamental is your basis. That's where I was going when I was talking about emotional intelligence and awareness being the mother of emotional intelligence. Well, this is the fundamental or the core technique that's important for us when we're handling people. Okay. And if you bring me on to your team as a business coaching or a business consultant, I'm going to really help you unpack your money psychology and your business psychology. So the way you do business, where does that come from? And we can dissect what is good and what is bad. What's going to help you get in front of some checks and what's going to prevent you from getting in front of some checks. So, but this is one of the fundamental techniques and fundamental cores that we will dissect and talk about, because what happens is a lot of us hear these things in theory, but we are not yet good at putting them into practice. So the fundamental technique in handling people there's 3. I'm going to read them and we'll talk about them. I want you all to comment in the chat. Number 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Now we're going to apply this to us as business people. Okay. So we're not standing around in front of our employees and our business people criticizing, condemning other people, and complaining. Number 2, give honest, sincere appreciation. Number 3, arouse in the other person an eager want. So what is the fundamental there? I see it as the fundamental is always to be solution oriented. You don't want to be standing around criticizing, because being overly critical can be detrimental to your business. You don't want to condemn people, places, things. You just don't want to be that. And you don't want to be complaining. You want to be focused on the general outcome. That's why it's important for you to write a mission statement and have goals and set your intention up front. And that becomes your eye on the prize. Then when it talks about giving honest, sincere appreciation, being honest, and what it means is not being fake. So don't tell somebody something that you don't necessarily believe is true or that's not true. You want to be sincerely appreciative. One of the things, there's two words that I use most in my business dealings, and it's thank you. If I'm at a restaurant and we're having a meeting and you bring me water, I say thank you. Every time that waiter comes in my face, thank you. When I'm working with my staff or my team, it's thank you. Because you want to arouse in the other person an eager desire to support you. And oftentimes when you make a person feel good, it's easier, much easier to get things out of them. I see Brother Samuel X. Clark just said, I always say winners train, losers complain. Beautiful. I love that. That's beautiful. Okay. So let's go to the next subchapter. Okay. I think we got those basics. Okay. Don't criticize and complain or condemn. Give honest, sincere appreciation and arousing the other person an eager want. This goes for your employees. This goes for your vendors. And let me tell you something. If you're working somewhere, use these techniques on your boss. Because in every way we should be grateful. The second subchapter is ways to make people like you. That's a lost art these days because we live in a pop culture world, a world dominated by pop culture, meaning everything we see on television is all about people being in your face. The bad boy gets the money, the bad girl gets the bag. And so we forget about how important it is that people like you. 5 points to that. Number one, become genuinely interested in other people. So many of us don't give a damn about nobody else. We don't come to a person's aid. We don't call to check on a person. Listen, I can only use myself as an example. If I have a friend and they're going through something, whether they're getting a new job or they're testing for a certification or they're getting married, I'm always saying, hey, how you doing? How's it going? Checking on them just to see how they're doing. I'll pay a friend a visit. I'll pop up at their office, say, hey, I just need to lay eyes on you. Make sure you okay. Become genuinely interested in people. Everything is not always about you. And it's so easy in this world that we live in to make everything about us. It's like, let me take a selfie. Let me show people what I got. Let me get this. But I always say, in order to receive, you have to learn to give. Number two is smile. Some of us don't even smile. We just walk around. We mean mugging. You know, we got this thug attitude when it comes to business. You know, we act nice in certain settings, but when it comes to money and business, we think that we got to act like a thug. We got to mean mug. We got to be a predator. Smile. Smile gets you a lot of things. I've been walking with people, whether it's in an airport, whether it's international, and I'm smiling at people. I'm acknowledging people. I'm saying thank you. And you'd be surprised at what that gets you. Number three, remember that a man or woman's name is to them the sweetest and most important sound in any language. So when you have your waiter comes up at a restaurant and says, hi, I'm Gina. I'm going to be serving you today. Remember Gina's name. So when Gina comes back with your bread or your appetizer, you can say, thank you, Gina. Right? When something happens, you can say, "Oh, Gina, can I help you?" Or let me tell you something, Gina, or whatever. If you're working with an employee, know their name. A lot of times, some of us are bad with names. So when a person gives you their names, associate it with something. Say it 3 times to yourself. But don't hesitate if you don't remember somebody's name to say, "I'm sorry, what's your name again?" Sometimes you got to get crafty about that, right? Because sometimes people are just so nice and you didn't catch their name at the beginning. You got to be okay with saying that because you want to give them their name back to them. If you have an employee that's struggling with something, you want to be able to say, "You know what? How are you doing, Gina?" It's a difference when you walk up to a person. Let's say you own a restaurant. I'm using a lot of restaurant examples today. Let's say you own a restaurant and Gina's one of your waitresses and you can see she's having a bad day. It hits different when you say, "How you doing?" versus, "Gina, how you doing? Is there anything I can help you? How can I be of service to help you do your job better today? How can I make you feel better? How can I?" And be willing to give of yourself. Number 4, be a good listener. Encourage other people to talk about themselves. Stop getting in a conversation with somebody, especially your employees, and then just running your mouth about yourself. I probably go to the extreme with this because my friends will tell me, like, "Why didn't you tell them this? And why didn't you tell them you have this background or that background?" And that's something that I know I have to work on, is speaking a little bit more about myself. Even as much as I'm on podcasts and as much as I'm on YouTube and social media, I don't really speak a lot and comprehensively about myself and about some of the ways in which I've been blessed. So there's a balance to that, right? And number 5, make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. Let me see what y'all talking about in the chat. Brother Javon says, "I'm upset with myself now for not seeing it that way, but Allahu Akbar for the brother and sisterhood." Yeah. I love the way you're taking the messenger proper handling of people in a business model. Yeah. We're applying our teachings that we've been taught, our supreme wisdom, to business, because I believe our next big thing that we have to do in our freedom fight is economic development. We have to establish these territories. We got to start with getting some subdivisions, some houses, but we got to learn how to conduct ourselves. And let me say this before I say anything else. And this is no slap on the people I'm talking about. I want to use it as an example. So I've traveled throughout Africa. I've been very, very blessed to be able to do that. When I went to Liberia, I was interested in Liberia because I know that Liberia was set up for and by free Black people from America. And in the interest of, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talking about us establishing a separate territory, I just wanted to see it and I wanted to experience it. I knew it was an African country and I didn't expect it to be like Dubai, but I just wanted to feel what it was like. And when I was there, I am now what they call NTR. And Liberians call it NTR. It's never to return. I'm good on y'all, because the way that I felt that they handled each other and the way they handled people was so blatant. And it's not that I hadn't seen that throughout the rest of Africa, but the rest of Africa wasn't set up by the free Black people from America. And I said to myself, this is a perfect example of what will happen if we get our own stuff and we don't change who we are. They brought Jim Crow over there. You got the lights against the darks. You got the Americanos against the Native Americans. We literally sat in a meeting. We were there to try to help do some hospital development. And we literally sat in a meeting And a woman just looked at us. She said, "What do you want though?" Like they really literally didn't even want us there. And there was all this colorism and just a lot of things happening. And I'm not being critical of them because I understand as a country when you're new and you're developing. But what it was an example of for me was showing me that we can't bring these old business models into a new world. And I'm saying literally, I talked yesterday about us buying up certain blocks and certain communities where we can own and control the school system and educate our children and bring back real education and provide safety for our elderly. A lot of our elderly people are really suffering from abuse, but we need communities where if they want to get out and go for a walk, part of the problem is a lot of them are stagnant in their communities. They can't move. They can't move around in their apartment because it's not safe for them. So we need neighborhoods and communities where our children and our elderly can get out and walk and interact with one another. And we have to set up the right environment in order for them to do that. We have to set up safe spaces for us to get healthy. See, a lot of us can't do this on our own. It's tough to get healthy when you're still dealing with toxic people. But if you can live in an environment that's an oasis for you, where it's just better, then you can have a chance at healing. So from a safe standpoint, I mean, setting up safe environments emotionally, mentally, where you know you're not going to be mishandled, and where people who mishandle people are properly dealt with, whether they're taught or punished. But we can't set that up until we get healthy, until we respect how we deal with one another. Brother Lamont said he loved to smile no matter what. Okay, Brother Samuel said, I need help in remember names, techniques. Okay, we'll talk about that. Sister Makeda Muhammad, all praise are due to Allah. I've not started a business yet, but I am a middle school reading teacher, and I can see how these divine principles can help improve my relationships with my students and develop a more improved learning environment. Thank you for taking time to share. Okay, that's awesome. Brother Samuel said he teaches school. Okay, so I see you all's comments here. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's not just guard up. It's just, it was not just guard up. It was rudeness. It was, look, we're the Americanos. We're the descendants from the Americans who came over here to help establish Liberia, this new territory. And we don't get down with Native Africans. And there was all this separatism and classism and colorism. And while you see that throughout the world, it just hit different because it was Liberia. And that was just personal for me. Because I was really on a mission to really study what our territories and stuff like that will look like and be like. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, so the third subcategory is ways to win people to your way of thinking. I've done several series on how to negotiate. I remember hearing many, many years ago, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say, we were in a business meeting, that negotiation is when both sides win. You got to both win something. And so winning people over to your way of thinking is important. Okay. And there's 12 points to this. I'm going to bring that up. Somebody asked to talk about how to remember names. The two techniques that I use, one, when a person says their name to me, I take it in. I don't just go, oh, okay. I may give my name back, which helps. So if they say, oh, my name is Samuel, I'll say, and I'm Sajdah, or I'm Wendy, depending on what environment they know me in. Most people in the business world know me as Wendy. I'm slowly converting them over to Sajdah, but either one is fine. But I'll say my name back. He may say, how you doing, sister? I'm Sajdah. Okay, I'm Wendy. Or, okay, I'm Sajdah. I'm Samuel. I'm Sajdah. You know, I'm say it back. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. Also, I will say their name in my head 3 times. So I'll go Samuel, Samuel, Samuel in my head. And when they come back to me again, either in the meeting or at the table, I use their name. So if I'm using their name in a sentence, it's easier for me to remember. So if I'm a school teacher and they come up and they're turning their papers in, I say, "Thank you, Samuel, appreciate it." So I'm using their name back at them. That also helps to remember. You just got to practice. But if they introduce themselves or you ask them their name, say your name back, because you can associate their name with your name. Say their name to you 3 times. You can use some physical characteristic to remember, and then use their name in your conversation. That'll help you remember. All right. So ways to win people to your way of thinking. Here's 12. Number 1, the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. I know some of us just love to argue. We love conflict. We love to debate. We watching Love and Hip Hop, and all we want to do is go off and snap, and we want to be cute in our ability to cause conflict. But guess what? That is not going to get you in front of more checks. Maybe if you want a reality TV show, but depending on how far you go with that, the money's going to dry up. So be careful with that. There's a time and a place where you got to get your point across, but don't just be picking arguments and starting arguments with people. Number 2, show respect for the other person's opinion. Never tell the person they're wrong. So if you have an employee that comes in and says to you, you know what, the way I think we should start doing this is that we should take the money first, or they give you some suggestion. Don't just out the gate be disrespectful, like, please miss me with all that. And don't say, no, that's where you're wrong. And I'll give you a personal example. I'm embarking on this project, the completion of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. It has so many elements in it of just about every project I've ever dealt with, and then some new ones. One of the elements is that it seems like so many people, almost everybody, has an opinion on what should be done, how it should be done, especially as we've started to really linger and stall in raising this last $500,000. And so people, oh, well, this is what you should do, and this is how you should do it. And I know that they don't have the perspective that I have. I know that they don't understand all of the aspects of the project that I'm dealing with. I know that they don't understand the image and what's out there and what's not out there. I know that they don't have the total picture. And so instead of saying, yes, they're wrong, sometimes I'll share some of the strategy. Sometimes I'll just smile and say, okay. Other times, I'll tell them, well, you know what, we're thinking about doing that in the future, because it may be something that we're doing. But it's just one of those projects where it feels like everybody has an opinion, and it usually happens when you're dealing with money. People don't always say something to you when you got money for stuff, but once you start trying to raise money, then people feel like now they're in an authority position. Even if they ain't got no money, I have people walk up to me that haven't donated a dime, who haven't supported at all, who may just be, or they may just do their support. It may just be a check-in, and they got something to say. Well, this is what I think you should do. You should have a rap concert in the backyard, or this is what I think you should do. And so proper handling of people comes in there, because you can't, I just don't think it's appropriate to be like, you know what, if you don't get out of my face, you don't even know what you're talking about, you're wrong. I have to show respect, because that's their opinion. That's the space that they're coming from. That's where they are, and they aren't necessarily where I am. So I can either take the time to bring them to where I am, or I can just respectfully acknowledge their opinion and keep it moving. I hope that makes sense, because you'll get that when you're starting your business. As soon as you start, people will always have something to say. Well, I think you should move the line this way, and I think you should do this. I think you should do that. But they don't know what you see and what you're doing, or even what fundamental techniques or what guidance you have that they know nothing about. Number 3, if you're wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Always make sure, especially with your staff, with your business partners, with your vendors, or your boss, to say, or whoever you're serving, you know what, I think you're right. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. And just move around it. And sometimes we get into this back and forth tit for tat where we're trying not to be wrong and the person's trying to make us wrong. So it turns into an argument. Or we got a predatory person who, when we're wrong about something, they want to just beat it over our heads. And so all you got to do is just say, you know what, I was wrong. The principle here is for you to just say, no, you're right, I was wrong. And if they continue, I've asked people, so how many times are we going to talk about that? I thought we dealt with that 2 years ago or a year ago. Yeah, you're right, I was wrong. Can we move on? And so I'll point out to them that they're being a predator. So number 4 is begin in a friendly way. It's important. It's interesting. It says begin in a friendly way. So you want to begin it in a friendly way. There's small talk, your energy, your vibration, being friendly, obviously at first, until you get a reason to be otherwise. But begin in a friendly way. Number 5, get the other person to say yes, yes, immediately. So when you're sitting down with your employees or your students or your team, and you have a concept that you're trying to convey to them, maybe the concept is how they should do something better. Maybe the concept is how they should move or what they should do next. And this is in business. I'll tell you something that's a concept that I always try to convey to people is to think. Because one of the challenges that happens, especially with us as Black people, and especially with us as Black people who are part of bigger organizations where we've already been taught to respect authority, but we move beyond the respect for authority into dependence on authority. And so sometimes those people are difficult to deal with in your business because they don't think. And so I find myself training them to think, and I'll ask questions. And I'll say, what conversation did you have about yourself? What conversation did you have with yourself when you asked me that? What conversation did you have with yourself when you decided to walk past that trash on the floor and not pick it up? And if they're honest, a lot of times they're really just waiting on somebody else to tell them to do it. What conversation did you have with yourself when you decided that you weren't going to support this particular project? Because a lot of times we're just waiting for somebody else to tell us to do it. Most of us have become institutionalized box checkers. So I'll give you another example. When we were building and developing the hospital in Maryland, I recognized that most people are just robotic box checkers. They're waiting for somebody else to either give them a list or some instructions on how they should do something. And so when I write my responses or requests or proposals, I understand what boxes they're trying to check. And that sets me up for later when I have a question with them, because I can say, okay, I understand what risks you're worried about. But, do you have this covered? And they may say, yes, I'm covered with that. Even with this project, I can go back to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House Museum Development Project. And people I know are sitting around waiting for somebody to tell them specifically. I said, well, did the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan tell us to support? Is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan with it? Is it a good thing? Did the messenger really live there? So I'm asking questions and they go, oh, yes, yes. Because we have to be broken out of this dependency where we think we need somebody else's permission in order to do good. We don't need somebody else's permission to do good. We just have to do good and be good. But a lot of us, it happens in corporate settings, it happens in church settings, it happens in governmental structures where we become so institutionalized that we are even waiting for somebody else to tell us how to think about something. We don't understand how to think independently and how to recognize, even for, I think what it is we're afraid of being wrong in our thoughts or being off. We're waiting for somebody to tell us what to wear, who we should marry, what we should be. So we're always looking for that. This is the product of this society in which we're living in. And to a certain extent, sometimes it's good because it can help us to self-correct and help us to correct, but we have to get to a point where we move beyond that. And so getting the other person to say yes, yes, immediately means that you got to go into the behind the scenes and try to understand why it is that they're doing what they do. And then that will be a huge technique to get them to win them over to your way of thinking. I'm sorry, I rambled on that and fumbled a little bit, but I think you guys understand. Number 6, let the other person feel the idea is theirs. So when you're talking to that person and you're getting them to agree to your points, it's a way in which you sort of back them into the concept and then they feel like it's their idea. So when I was putting the hospital together, I'm giving them all the risks that they're taught and told by their boss that they need to mitigate. And I'm showing them how I'm mitigating those risks and how this helps you check this box and this helps you check that box. Okay, are you really just trying to verify that the name and the address are accurate? Here's a third-party document that verifies that. And then when they check the box, they feel like it was their idea. The other thing is, let the person do most of the talking. Learn how to formulate your questions and your comments so that they start talking. Because people like to talk. People like to hear their name and they like to hear themselves talk. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. This goes into empathy. Because a lot of times we're so focused on how do I get them to do this? How do I get them to see that they're wrong? How do I push them past this point that we lose track of the fact that that person has a point of view. And we need to be empathetic and understand that person's point of view before we can even win them over to our way of thinking. And so once we know their point of view, we hear their point of view, we can address their point of view. But if you don't know their point of view, you're just talking and they're not hearing nothing. Number 9, be sympathetic with other person's ideas and desires. Everybody wants something. See, sometimes when we become so institutionalized, we disrespect a person's desires. Everybody showed up. Listen, I am a huge respecter of God and the fact that he deposited himself in each and every one of us. We all showed up on the planet as his expression and for a reason. And I don't care if you work for me in a very big capacity. I want to be clear on what it is that you want. If you tell me, hey, you know what, Sister Sajdah, I really only want to work here 3 years and then I want to open my own business, that's okay for me. Because as long as I know that, I can help you get to your own business and I can know how to deal with you from a planning standpoint on my side. You're not a long-term person that I should be grooming for a long-term position. You only want 3 years. I get it. But we have to know that about the person. What do they want? It's one thing to bring people into our organization and into our business and train them and tell them what to do and be so caught up in them checking the box. But it's another thing to say, what is it that you want? So one of the first questions that I ask my clients, whether it's my preservation consulting clients, business coaching clients, first thing I ask is, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want out of this relationship? What do you want out of what you're asking me to do? What is it that you want? Number 10, you want to appeal to the nobility or the noble motives in that person. Most people like to think that they're good people, but they don't get the results that they should get being good people because sometimes they don't know how to act like good people. So the heart is good, but because all they see is predatory behavior, they don't know how to act. And number 11, you got to dramatize your ideas. And number 12, throw down a challenge. I love placing a challenge on my employees and talking to them about, let me see how many coins you can sell. Let me see how many vendors you can sign up. Let's see, what are we saying here in the chat? Brother says, Sister Sajdah, there's a quote that says, great minds talk about ideas, average minds talk about events, but small minds talk about people. True. Self-discipline, yes, you're right, Brother Victor, is a great help. Yeah, this is the master art of questioning. You are so right. Yeah. They will criticize and expect you to get on board and be, yeah. That's a problem that a lot of us mistake that a lot of us make in leadership. Oftentimes as business owners, we're very, very critical of people. We dog people out with our language, with the way we do our policies and procedures, and then we expect them to be dedicated. And you know what? One of the biggest aha moments that I had in business was realizing that a lot of people are just there for a paycheck. And so that sometimes is a reality that we have to deal with. I'm the kind of person, I like to give opportunities. I like to say, you guys probably notice when I put things together, I'm always like, look, I'm going to share revenue. So if we need $500,000 to complete the home, I'm willing to share revenue. If you sell a coin, I'll show revenue. If you sell a sponsorship, I'll share some of that. It's not even revenue. It's just what's coming in because I appreciate your efforts. But you have to understand when you do that. And for me, I'm an empath. So I have to understand that everybody doesn't have the same motivation that I have. And so I can't be overly sensitive about that. I even have to understand, and we all have to understand that people are where they are. And they manage, they rule, they labor from where they are in life. And sometimes for companies, for organizations, for institutions, we give up so much of our personal life that it almost becomes irrelevant. And so when you come and you have a goal or a desire that you're trying to express, sometimes your feelings get hurt because you wish they would pay more attention. And I think we have to get over that and understand that that just may be where that person is. But the biggest thing is stop putting so much responsibility for your development on your leadership. Whether it's your company, church, mosque, whatever, stop putting so much responsibility on that. You know, people who decide that they want to be the supervisor or the manager or the laborer or whatever, that's a big task. And there's a lot that you got to balance because now there's an aspect of your own desires that you have to give up. And I think we have to have empathy for that. And don't get so mad when maybe they didn't tell us all the boxes we need to check. See, we're like little birdies just chirping. We can't wait for them to feed us. But what we have to do is learn how to turn that around and be of service to them. See, I think we got it flipped. Those that are in charge, we're supposed to serve them, and we're supposed to serve up. And then in turn, they serve down. And so it's a cyclical relationship. But you know that let me see how to say this. You know that your obligations to God and to your own reason for showing up on the planet are yours and yours alone. And so you have to keep that in mind. You have to be honest with yourself. See, part of the problem, the reason why we end up messing up in our organizations and our businesses is because a lot of times, even as employees, we are not honest. And employers don't always allow us to be honest. It's like I was saying, I had somebody come to me and say, hey, I really just want to work here for the summer. Or I really just want to be here for about 3 years. And then I'm going to leave. I'm going to go have a baby. I'm going to stay home. Allow that person to be honest with you. And then you in turn learn how to be honest with them. A person may say to you, hey, I'm in school, so I can only give so many hours. Allow them that opportunity to be honest. You're going to get more out of people and then if they show up and say, hey, I got an hour I can be of service today. How can I help? Allow them to do that. And yeah, when we're trying to get stuff done, we do sometimes got to put a little bit of heavy hand down on somebody. But I think sometimes the open dialogue makes sense. And then even with that, when we're trying to push a business forward, a big business forward, a lot of times you got to do stuff that maybe ain't in your job description. You might need to clean up. We might need your help cleaning up. We might need your help doing security. And you say, well, that ain't what I'm here for. Well, that's what we need today. And you got to be okay with that as well. See, we are nation building. When you're opening up a business, that's like nation building. And so you got to be okay with doing stuff that maybe you shouldn't do. When we first started the clinics in Maryland, it'd be nothing for the end of the day for myself and my business partner, who's the surgeon, to be up in there cleaning up, sweeping out in front of the building in the morning. It's okay. It was nothing for us. Okay, I see a couple questions in here. Okay, question. Earlier you mentioned get the person to say yes, yes immediately. When they are trying to convince you of a flawed argument, should you be saying yes as you listen to their argument? Does that work against your proving your case? No, because yes can indicate that you're listening and you're understanding. I wouldn't say the words yes in a case like that when a person has, like a super flawed premise. I would nod. And I would sometimes give affirmation by saying, yes, I get where you're coming from, or I get where you're coming from, but consider this, or have you thought about that? So you're accepting where they are, but you're introducing to them a new concept to get them where you're trying to get them to go. So you want to acknowledge where they are. It's like, I understand that. I get it. Have you considered this, or would you consider that? That's another way of affirming. Okay. Alicia said, my intern was transparent with me and I appreciate it. She gave me what she had. Yeah. Allow people to be open and transparent with you. And then you decide, because you may say, you know what? I don't have time to train you. And all you can do is, and you just think you're going to come back and forth over here for 2-3 hours once a month. So because you're honest with me, I appreciate that, but I'm going to be honest with you. You see? So it just creates dialogue. Create a safe space for a person to express themselves authentically. That's exactly right. Wa alaikum salam, Brother Michael. All right. Here's the last one for this chapter. For this morning. I know we're a little bit over, but this is a special series. The fourth subchapter is ways to change people without giving offense or accusing or arousing resentment. Okay. Number one, we don't want to create resentment and we don't want to offend people. Okay. Number one, there's a technique to offending people. And sometimes in advanced negotiations, there's a way to offend somebody to get them to pay attention. But that's not what we're talking about here. Number one, begin with praise and honest appreciation. We talked about that, right? Honestly, really appreciate people. Number two, call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. A lot of us like to say, no, that don't make no sense. Don't do that. Stop. But the better way to say that is, you know what? When you put the salt on the meat after you cook it, it doesn't infuse into the flesh of the meat. And all you get is salt when you taste the meat. Not, man, you put the salt on the meat after you cooked it. That's wrong. But you explain to that person, because obviously if that person's cooking, they want their food to be good. So you come through their desire and show them how they could have done it better. Number three, talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. Okay, that's big, because a lot of times when you're the boss, when you're in charge, when you're the laborer, you're whatever, people think that you're either flawless or they either think you flawless. And so you can just be honest. Y'all know I do that when I teach this class. Even when in the nation, when I taught orientation years ago, I would talk about my mistakes. It makes it more relatable. People don't feel like you think you're so perfect, and then they don't feel apprehensive about sharing with you. Number three, talk about your own mistake. Okay, we talked about that one. Number four, ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Yeah, ask questions. And then you can give your direct order, right? But sometimes when you come with the direct order off top, you have to consider the circumstances. If it's fast moving and it's an emergency and you got to just give a quick direct order, that's one thing. But a lot of times we just give a direct order with no explanation. People don't know anything. And then we expect them to go out and execute the order when maybe they don't really know how to execute it, but they just trying because you gave them a direct order. So as leaders, as employers and business leaders, we have to know when and how to give direct orders. Number five, let the other person save face. Don't be about busting folks out and embarrassing them all the time. Sometimes people will do things in public and you gotta get at them. But for the most part, when people do things in private, before you mention it in the public, make sure you've had a conversation with them. And maybe they know you're going to use it as an example. Or if you do, make sure you allow them to save face. Number six, praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. So it's just like if you have a child and when they stand up, you clapping. The first time they stand up, woo, you don't say, man, sit down. You can't even walk. You praise them. Then when they take that first step, you clapping, woo. You don't say, man, if you don't sit down somewhere, you can only take one step and dog them out because they can't walk 10. So you just keep improving and sharing with people. I'll say to somebody like, you know what? This is a great job because I understand where they are. And I'll say, this is a great job. Here's what you want to do next. Here's what, see, this is why you shouldn't be trying to take positions in business or otherwise when you can't train. You want to train that person so they can go on their own. You want to show them how to stand up, how to step, and eventually how to run, how to flip, how to fly. But you got to be willing to take the time to give them that step. It's not always about you. Number 7, give the other person a fine reputation to live up to, right? Be a good example. That's why it's important to use examples about your own personal development in that particular endeavor. Now, you ain't got to go into all your other business. I'm talking about as it relates to what y'all talking about. But it's good to give them an example so they have a reputation to live up to. They understand. Number 8, use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct. And number 9, make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. Okay. So next week, we're going to talk about things that are important to people. We're going to talk about things laborers or employees should be concerned with. All right. Okay. I see y'all in the chat. Thank you. Thank you. So, excuse me. That's our first series on the proper handling of people. You come back next week with any questions. If during the week you think about any questions, hit me up on Sajdah House, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad on Instagram, and I'll do a live and we'll talk through these questions. If you got scenarios, DM me on Instagram. Let me put it in here in the chat I don't really look at my Facebook DMs, so don't DM me there because you have so many predators that be in those Facebook DMs. I don't really deal with those. But the Sajdah House DMs, I look at more. And if I see one of you all's names, I'll definitely look at it. And so hit me up if you have any questions about the proper handling of people the first week. And I'll come out, I'll do a live as a follow-up. I want this to be a really interactive series because I want us to make sure that we're playing out scenarios so that we really elevate and move to this next level as we begin to establish our businesses. Okay. And if you, this will go up on YouTube. And if you want to share with anybody else as you're studying, and I'll find out about the book, I'll email the final call and see when the book is, or if the book is out there. Okay. Brother Samuel said, this is the most important series. Thank you so much. All praises due to Allah. I pray that everybody gets something from this. So anyway, with that, y'all know where to go to answer questions. If you want me to do a live on a particular subject, I'll give a live. If you want me to give an example of how it's something that I had to overcome or I had to deal with, I don't have a problem. You can be honest. If you give me specifics in your question, I won't bust you out or bust the people out. I will come back and try to give us a good way in which, a healthy way in which we can respond, in which we can move. But the idea here, you all, is we got to get healthy. We got to get healthy so that we can become wealthier, so we can experience more love, so that we can interact better, right? With our God, with our people. But the idea is us becoming healthier. And let me just say this. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot among Black people, and this is across the board in the mosque, in the church, in business, in pop culture, is we are so aggressive about diagnosing one another. Very aggressive with that. Oh, well, this is what's wrong with them. They need to go get some therapy. And this is, according to whether it's some technique that we use or whatever. I'm not even going to give it no life, but we always are diagnosing people. Stop diagnosing people and let's work on being better and let's help people. You see, in the 50s and 60s, they didn't, or even before then, they didn't have no special techniques. It was just love. It was, let me stop by my sister's house and check on her. Let me stop by my brother's house. Somebody passed away. Something happened. It was just love. It was love that got most of us to where we are today. Whether we went through some trauma and the trauma converted us and got us get ourselves together, but it was love from somewhere. Even if it was that little spark of love inside of us because we were in a bad environment, but it was love from somewhere that got us to where we are. So let's multiply that love. Let's be healthier. And that's what this series is all about. Let's have healthy handling of our staff, of our employees, of the people who work with us, of our boss. Look, if you're waiting on people to be perfect, it ain't going to never happen. Folks are not going to be perfect. So you may as well find a way on how to deal with inappropriate people or unhealthy people in your own healthy way. Okay? Nobody's going to be perfect. You're not going to have perfect bosses. You're not going to have perfect people that you work for. You're not going to have a perfect pastor. You're not going to have a perfect minister. You're not going to have none of that's perfect. But how do you learn to be healthy enough so that you can extract the good from what it is that you see? Some people give more good than others. But how do you extract what you need in order to heal yourself? So when we got a technique on how we're handling people, that allows us to read. It gives us a point of comparison. Okay? All right, y'all. Let me get off my soapbox. So don't go anywhere. Y'all know me. I got a few commercials for you all. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for listening. And thank you for supporting my brand, my work, my network since 2009. And be it the will of God, we're moving to another level. I'm working on a new book that I think you all are going to be really excited about. All right. Peace and blessings, family. Love you all. Tune in and make sure you like and subscribe again next week. And any questions, DM me on Instagram and I'll do a live and we'll talk about it. All right. Peace and blessings.
You belong to yourself. You're an independent people, created from the nation of free people. Yes, sir. You don't need to go nowhere but to yourself. Yes, sir. There will be a great separation. Yes, sir. So I said, it is on now.
The college is meant to prepare you for your future. That the time dictates that if we don't do something for ourselves as a people, we will be destroyed. And the aim of the enemy right now is to take us out.
We have God with us. We have Him as our guide. Yes, sir. We don't have to stand around here and ask the question, what must be done? Yes, sir. Get up and let's go and do something. Yes, sir. We cannot sit down. We cannot lay down. Yes, sir. We must get up. Yes, sir. And go to work.
Do you know what real joy is in life? Visioning something and bringing it into reality. That's real joy. Do you know what the next step in joy is? Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in unity.
Tonight, you need to fasten your seatbelts. We're going to hear from some of the greatest minds in the world. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of trusting our future and the future of our children into the hands of those who don't love us. I believe we need to revitalize black leadership.